My younger sister was born in my shadow, and she spent her entire life trying to extinguish my light so she could feel some warmth. It started with little things, as it always does. My favorite toy would go missing, only to be found in her room, broken. The story I wrote for a school competition would be submitted by her with her name at the top. She'd decopy my haircut, my clothes, my mannerisms, but it was never admiration, it was appropriation. She didn't want to be like me, she wanted to be me, she wanted to erase me and take my place. Our parents called it sibling rivalry and told me I should be flattered. They told me I needed to be more understanding, that it was hard for her, always coming in second, so I learned to swallow my frustration. I became her protector, her confidant, her biggest cheerleader, hoping that if I gave her enough of my light, she would eventually find her own. I was a fool. My love for my fiancé was the one thing I thought was truly mine, a sacred space she couldn't possibly infiltrate. He was everything, kind, ambitious, funny, with a way of looking at me that made me feel like the only person in the universe. Our love story was a slow, beautiful burn over 5 years. We built a life, a home, a future. The proposal was perfect, a surprise on a rainy Tuesday that felt more intimate and real than any grand gesture. The wedding planning was a joyous whirlwind. For the first time, I felt my sister's envy wasn't a threat but a distant hum. She threw herself into the role of maid of honor with a terrifying enthusiasm, insisting on helping with every detail. I saw it as her finally being happy for me, of us finally connecting as sisters. The centerpiece of it all was the dress. It wasn't an off-the-rack designer gown. It was a collaboration between myself and a local couturier, a dress born from my dreams. It was vintage lace from our grandmother's own gown, painstakingly restored and incorporated into a modern, elegant silhouette. It was more than a dress, it was my history and my future stitched together. It was one of a kind, irreplaceable, and it was mine. The frost began to set in a few months before the wedding. He started working late, his phone became permanently attached to his hand, and he'd angle the screen away from me when it buzzed. The easy intimacy we shared was replaced by a tense, polite distance. He blamed it on the stress of a big project at work, the pressure of the wedding. My sister was my sounding board. I would pour out my anxieties to her and she would soothe me with reassuring words. "He's just nervous," she'd say, squeezing my hand. "Men are like that. He adores you. Don't be silly." She was my greatest comfort and my greatest betrayer. The discovery wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was a quiet, sickening slide into a new reality. I was looking for a shared document on his laptop, a spreadsheet for the wedding guest list, and his email was open. Her name was in the subject line of the most recent message, "Tonight." I felt my blood run cold. I told myself it was innocent, that it was about wedding plans, but I clicked it, and there it was, not just one email, but a thread stretching back for months. A secret, parallel love story written in the language of betrayal. Their words were a vulgar parody of the ones he used with me. They wrote of stolen moments, of their uncontrollable connection, of their plans for the future. They talked about me. They pitied me. They called me naive, boring, blind. They laughed at me. In that moment, the man I was going to marry and the sister I had spent my life protecting ceased to exist. They were replaced by two monstrous strangers. I closed the laptop, my movements slow and deliberate. There was no screaming, no crying. The pain was so vast, so absolute, it was silent. It was a black hole that opened up in my chest and swallowed everything: my love, my trust, my past, my future. I walked in a daze to my closet, needing to see the dress, the one pure, untouched symbol of a dream they hadn't yet tainted. I reached for the garment bag, but my hand met empty air. It was gone. The bag, the dress, my history, my future, it was all gone. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that she had taken it. She hadn't just stolen my fiancé, she was stealing my wedding. She was going to walk down the aisle in my dress to marry my man. The sheer psychopathic audacity of it was breathtaking. She wasn't just taking my place. She was trying to become me, to live my life, to wear my skin. That night, I didn't confront them. An emotional scene was what they would expect, what they would want. It would feed their twisted narrative of a passionate, uncontrollable love that left a hysterical woman in its wake. I would not give them the satisfaction. I played my part. When he came home, I pretended to be asleep. The next morning, I left a note: "Need to clear my head, gone to visit a friend for a few days." I packed a single bag and I walked out of the life we had built. They thought I was running away to lick my wounds. They thought they had won. They messaged our family and friends, spinning a tale of my emotional breakdown, my cold feet. They were so busy building their narrative of my weakness, they never once considered that I wasn't running away from them. I was running towards a war. They wanted my wedding. I was going to give it to them. It would be a day of celebration, a day of joy, a day they would remember for the rest of their miserable lives. I was going to hand-deliver their wedding gift, the beginning of their own personal hell, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. I disappeared. Not in a frantic, dramatic way, but with a quiet, deliberate finality. I drove for 6 hours to a city where no one knew me and rented a sterile, anonymous corporate apartment. This was not a place to grieve, this was a headquarters. The first thing I did was methodically and ruthlessly detangle my life from his. My fiancé, for all his charm, had a dirty little secret: he was a financial mess. He had a flair for the grand gesture and the expensive toy, but he was perpetually leveraged to the hilt, using the promise of our combined future and my family's stability as collateral. We had a joint account for wedding expenses, which I immediately emptied, transferring my half, which was, in reality, about 95% of the total, into a new account under my name only. I then called the bank that held the mortgage on the house we shared. While we were both on the mortgage, I was the primary applicant, and my income and credit score were the reason we'd been approved. I explained that I would no longer be residing there or contributing to the payments. This would trigger a refinancing clause, forcing him to requalify on his own, something I knew he couldn't possibly do. His dream house was about to become his biggest liability. Next, I tackled his career. He worked in a boutique investment firm, and his biggest client, the one that made up the bulk of his portfolio, was an old family friend of mine. My father had introduced them. I scheduled a lunch with this friend. I didn't have to lie or embellish. I simply told him the truth, calmly and factually. I told him that the man he was entrusting with his fortune had been deceiving me for months and had now run off with my sister. I didn't have to ask him to pull his accounts. A man who values loyalty as much as he does would never continue to do business with someone so devoid of character. Within a week, my ex-fiancé lost his cornerstone client, a move that I knew would not only cripple his income but also send shockwaves of distrust through his firm. While his financial world was beginning to crumble, I turned my attention to my sister. She craved social status more than anything. She curated her life on social media with the precision of a surgeon, presenting a flawless facade of popularity, success, and effortless beauty. Her entire self-worth was tied to the number of likes she received. I knew all her secrets, all the little lies she told to inflate her importance, all the insecurities she hid behind a filter. I didn't need a frontal assault. I opted for a campaign of psychological warfare. I created a dozen anonymous social media accounts. I started planting seeds of doubt among her circle of friends. A direct message here, a comment there. Did you know she lied about that promotion? I heard that story she told about her trip wasn't exactly true. I used details only a sister would know, which made the anonymous tips all the more credible. I watched as her social world, once a source of validation, became a paranoid landscape of suspicion. She started posting less, her frantic, smiling selfies replaced by a nervous silence. She was so focused on the small fires I was setting around her that she never saw the inferno I was building for her wedding day. The main event required a professional. I hired a private investigator, a discreet and highly effective woman with a background in forensic accounting. I didn't want dirt on my sister, I already had plenty. I wanted to know everything about the man she was marrying. I gave the investigator his name, his date of birth, and a significant portion of my now liberated savings. I told her to dig into every corner of his life, especially his finances and his romantic history. I suspected his betrayal of me was not an isolated incident but a pattern of behavior. I was not prepared for what she found. My ex-fiancé wasn't just a casual cheater, he was a predator. He had a history of targeting women with financial stability, a string of broken engagements and long-term relationships that all ended under mysterious, often financially devastating, circumstances for the woman involved. He was a parasite, a charming, handsome leech, but that was only the appetizer. The main course was his current activities. He hadn't just been cheating on me with my sister. The investigator uncovered a third woman, a wealthy divorcee he had been seeing for over a year, overlapping with both me and my sister. He was playing the long game with her, positioning himself as the sensitive, caring man who could manage her fortune. My sister wasn't the love of his life, she was his backup plan, a consolation prize after he lost me, the bigger catch. The investigator provided me with a treasure trove of evidence. Photos of him with the other woman, screenshots of their intimate texts, copies of financial statements showing money he had borrowed from her. It was a complete and utter demolition of the man they both thought they knew. Now I had to plan the delivery. A drunken toast or a single anonymous email felt too small, too easily dismissed. This needed to be a public execution. I bought a domain name, something simple and elegant like theweddingoftank.com. I spent weeks building a website. It was a masterpiece of storytelling. The homepage was a beautiful, professional-looking engagement photo of them smiling blissfully. The tagline reads, "Celebrating their eternal love," but the menu navigation told a different story. The tabs were labeled, the timeline, the finances, the other woman, and the dress. Under the timeline, I created an interactive calendar that laid out his affair with my sister, complete with screenshots of their emails and texts, cross-referenced with my personal calendar, showing him texting her while he was on vacation with me, while he was at my family's home for dinner. The finances was a detailed breakdown of his debt, the impending foreclosure on the house, and the loss of his major client, complete with scanned documents. The other woman was a photo gallery, a collection of candid shots of him with his other lover, looking just as happy and in love as he did with my sister. And finally, the dress. This page featured a single, beautiful photo of me taken during my final fitting wearing my wedding dress. Beneath it, the text read, "The only thing stolen in this story was this dress, stolen by the bride to wear as she marries the man who is engaged to the dress's rightful owner, her sister." I programmed the site to go live at exactly 8:30 p.m. on their wedding day, the time I knew they would be cutting the cake. And I arranged for a tech-savvy freelancer to send a mass text message to every single person on the guest list, a list I still had at that precise moment. The text would be simple: a look inside the happy couple's journey to the altar, click here to see more. They were about to have their cake, and they were going to get to eat it too in front of everyone they knew. On the day of the wedding, I was hundreds of miles away, sitting in my quiet apartment with a glass of expensive champagne and my laptop open. I wasn't sad, I wasn't heartbroken. I was a general in her war room watching the final decisive battle unfold on a screen. Through the public Instagram stories of mutual acquaintances, I saw it all. I saw the venue, a lavish country club I knew he couldn't afford. I saw the flowers, the guests, the string quartet, and then I saw her. My sister walking down the aisle in my dress. She looked beautiful, a radiant, triumphant vision in my grandmother's lace. The sight of her in that gown, a gown that represented my purest dreams, should have shattered me. Instead, it filled me with a cold, hard clarity. She wasn't just wearing a dress, she was wearing a costume, a lie, and I was about to rip it off her in front of the whole world. I watched as they exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other, the words turning to ash in the air. I saw them have their first dance, his hand on her waist in my dress, both of them beaming with smug satisfaction. They had done it. They had erased me and taken my life. They thought this was their happy ending. At 8:30 p.m., my finger hovered over the final command on my laptop. It was all automated, but I wanted the symbolic victory of pushing the button myself. I clicked execute. Far away in that grand ballroom, as they stood poised with a silver knife over a 5-tiered cake, a symphony of buzzing and beeping began. I watched a live video a cousin was streaming. I saw heads dip down, faces illuminated by the glow of phone screens. I saw confusion, then whispers. The whispers grew into a shocked murmur that spread through the room like a virus. I saw my sister's smiling face falter, her eyes darting around the room, trying to understand what was happening. My ex-fiancé's confident smirk vanished, replaced by a pale, clammy look of dawning horror. A man in the front row, the bride's uncle, stood up, his face purple with rage, and pointed a trembling finger at the groom. The bride's father grabbed my sister's arm, his expression one of utter disbelief and disgust. The beautiful, perfect wedding reception devolved into chaos. I saw guests standing up and walking out, shaking their heads. I saw bridesmaids crying, pointing accusatory fingers. The video feed shook wildly as my cousin got closer to the head table. I could hear shouting. My sister was screaming at her new husband, holding up a phone, shoving it in his face. He was backing away, stammering, trying to deny the undeniable photographic evidence of his other life. The final image from the live feed, before it was abruptly cut, was of my sister, her face a grotesque mask of fury and humiliation, ripping at the delicate lace on the bodice of my dress, tearing apart the symbol of her stolen victory. The website went viral in our community. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Their perfect wedding day became a local legend, a cautionary tale of deceit and spectacular comeuppance. The marriage, born in such public poison, was over before the honeymoon. They filed for an annulment within weeks. He was fired from his job, his reputation in the financial world utterly destroyed. He left town, buried under a mountain of debt and shame. My sister became a social pariah. Her friends abandoned her, her social media went dark, and she had to move back in with our parents, the only people who couldn't completely turn their backs on her, though their relationship was forever fractured by the shame she had brought upon the family. I never spoke to either of them again. There was nothing left to say. I had not just exposed their lies, I had held up a mirror to their true selves, and the reflection had destroyed them. Sometimes I wonder if I went too far. But then I remember the chilling silence of my empty closet and the casual cruelty in their emails. They didn't just betray me, they tried to annihilate my reality, to steal my identity. My revenge was not about causing them pain. It was about reclaiming my story, about refusing to be the silent, forgotten victim in the narrative they had written. I sold the engagement ring and used the money to travel the world for a year. I saw mountains and oceans, I met new people, and I slowly, piece by piece, built a new life, one that was truly my own, free from the shadows of my past. I am not the naive, trusting woman I was before. The scars are there, but they are a reminder not of what I lost, but of what I survived. They tried to bury me, but they didn't know I was a seed. Thanks listening this story. Now I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now. Share this story with your friends, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to Revenge Laura for more episodes.